Several professors, teachers, and school staff members have come under scrutiny for making controversial posts about the death of Charlie Kirk. According to an NBC News review of school district and college announcements, at least 36 education professionals have left or been removed from their jobs amid claims of inappropriate comments. The posts made range from political criticisms to expressions of outright glee. In Texas, the state's education agency is investigating more than 280 complaints against teachers. Florida and Oklahoma have also launched similar probes. This week, Clemson University fired 3 staff members for their controversial posts about Kirk. And UCLA placed an employee on leave pending an investigation. This all comes as Vice President J.D. Vance and Attorney General Pam Bondi have been encouraging people to report any coworkers who appear to be celebrating Kirk's death. That move, however, is raising concerns about freedom of speech, as some teachers' unions and First Amendment advocates argue educators have a right to make these comments and that their firings are creating a culture of fear. Our Friday panel is with us. Joining us now, MSNBC analyst and former Republican Congressman Carlos Curbelo of Florida. Also with me on set here, political strategist Maya Rupert. Carlos, I want to go to you first because you previously served on the Dade County School Board. Can you talk a little bit about the effect of these firings and the impact it could have on teachers and education writ large?
Look, Ali, this is demoralizing. People are worried. They're wondering if they're being watched and observed constantly. And in my view, I think this is just totally contrary to what Charlie Kirk stood for. I think if we want to honor Charlie Kirk, we can say, look, there's a lot of nasty speech in this country. A lot of it is gross. We should condemn it. But the solution is not to persecute people. It's to confront them in the public square and to say what you're saying is wrong and teach young people that that kind of speech shouldn't be celebrated, that we should strive to be better people. But what's more important than all of that is that this is a free nation. I mean, this is why my family came to this country, because in Cuba, where they used to live, they couldn't express themselves, right? Here, even if it's ugly speech, if it's gross, we allow it because this is a free country. We confront it. We don't celebrate it. We don't have to be shy about that, but we don't have to persecute people either.
Yeah, I will say, Maya, in watching the way that the vice president as well as the attorney general have been urging people to go after neighbors of theirs who say things they don't agree with, does feel like the deepest and most ironic way that the people who once railed against cancel culture are now appropriating it in a different way for themselves. I mean, what are you seeing here?
Right, and I think that's a really important point, is that this is not it's an instance of cancel culture, right? This is not individuals going to each other and sort of holding people accountable for this is not the consequences of someone's actions, right? When you get the vice president involved, when you get the AG involved, when the FCC chair is threatening networks and their licenses, we're not talking about cancel culture. We are talking about a violation of the First Amendment. And that is the piece of this that I feel like gets lost. J.D. Vance urging people to do this shifts this into another realm. We're talking about the government action. And that's where we have had a line, and it feels like it's being crossed right now.
Yeah, that's exactly right. I mean, when we talked about cancel culture, Carlos, it was always a conversation around more of like an unofficial public canceling or a private company, which are able to hire and fire as they see fit. What Maya is talking about is something different. And frankly, when you see people like Jimmy Kimmel being pulled off the air, however indefinitely, and you hear the conversations that the Attorney General and others are having, you've even heard from people like Tucker Carlson and others on the right who say, actually, I have concern when we start litigating free speech. This is kind of fundamental to what this country has always been about, right? I mean, what are you seeing here?
That's right, Ali. I mean, this is the big irony here. I think conservatives, the American right, for a long time had the upper hand on this issue. I strongly disagreed with liberals running people off of college campuses and forcing events to be canceled and, building these circuses around people who they disagreed with. I think conservatives won the public on this issue of cancel culture, but now they're losing it. And by the way, a lot of these young voters that President Trump won in the last election, part of his very impressive coalition. I think a lot of these people, between the whole Epstein files controversy, now this free speech debate, they're going to be demoralized, and congressional Republicans need those people to turn out for them if they are going to hold on to the House next fall. So I think this is putting a strain on the president's coalition, and it's challenging a lot of the groups that came to him for the first time, came to a Republican candidate in decades. Now some of these people are wondering, what are we doing here? These people are acting exactly as some on the left who we were trying to vote against.
Yeah, I think it's the question that we ask really after every presidential election. Is this a coalition that is now permanently realigned, or is it a coalition that can shift based on what it sees out of the administration's actions? Of course, all of that gets put to test in the midterms, but well before we get there, Maya, there is a looming government shutdown that I think says a lot about where the Democratic dynamics are right now. I've been talking to a lot of outside groups as well as Democratic members who are very much in a posture that they are willing to fight for health care, even if it means withholding their votes. And as we were talking about with the congressman, government funding is always bipartisan because there's typically Republican members who say, I'm never going to vote for that. And that's where Democrats come in because it's good governance. What's different about this moment?
I think Democrats are seeing this as this is the one opportunity right now when Republicans have the White House, have the Senate, and have the House. There isn't a lot of power that can be held by Democrats. And that's been frustrating for Democratic voters. People want to see someone fighting back, and there haven't been a lot of options. The budget is a place where people can fight back. And so I think you're going to see Democrats saying, we need to hold this line. We need to make sure that we are asking for what our voters are asking for in this fight. The one caution I would offer is I think Medicaid, ACA subsidies, all of this, that's incredibly important. But I would also say that there are a lot of voters who are asking, we need to curb ICE enforcement. People cannot be masked agents running around streets. We need to, have an administration who's going to respect the First Amendment. I think they should be asking for more, not just the things that, truthfully, if they get them, are going to help, yes, the entire country, but politically also Republicans. Republicans need Medicaid expansion to continue because those are going to be their voters who are hurt as well. Yeah. I think Democrats should take this opportunity to get a political victory on things that Democratic voters are asking for right now. We don't have a lot of these opportunities. This is one, and I really think that they should be pushing on some of these other issues.
And I think my understanding of where House Democrats are is they are comfortable pushing on those issues. The open question has always been the Senate. You need 60 votes to be able to avoid a government shutdown here. We know back in March, the Schumer posture was that he would allow some members to provide those votes and avoid a shutdown. Now he knows what the grassroots pressure looks like. He and Hakeem Jeffries are marching more in lockstep, and there is a confidence that that's going to continue. We're going to see how this goes. We've got 2 weeks, although they're supposed to be out of town next week. We'll see. Carlos Curbelo and Maya Rupert, thank you for wrapping up another very busy week with us on our panel.